Gene Simmons' latest revelation has fans in shock. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of rock and roll's most fascinating transformation stories. Picture this: a poor immigrant child from Israel who couldn't speak English, living in poverty in New York City, who would eventually become one of the most recognizable faces in rock history. But here's what you didn't know about the man behind the demon makeup and the legendary tongue. His journey from Chaim Witz to Gene Simmons is filled with struggles, controversies, and surprises that will completely change how you see this rock icon. What's coming next is even more surprising than you might imagine. Before we get started, make sure you like, share, and subscribe for more incredible rock biography content. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop these deep dives into your favorite music legends. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming up in this story. Early life and struggles in Israel. Let's start at the very beginning, because Gene Simmons' origin story is nothing like what most people expect from a rock star. Born Chaim Witz on August 25, 1949, in Haifa, Israel, his early years were marked by hardship that would shape the driven businessman and performer we know today. His mother, Florence Klein, was a Holocaust survivor who had witnessed unimaginable horrors during World War II. Can you imagine carrying that kind of generational trauma while trying to build a new life? His father, Chaim Witz, worked as a carpenter, but the family struggled financially in the newly formed nation of Israel. The weight of survival was heavy on this small family, and young Chaim would grow up understanding that nothing in life comes easy. But wait, there's a detail about his childhood that most fans never learn. Chaim was actually a shy, bookish child who loved reading comic books and was fascinated by horror movies. Yes, the future demon of rock was once a quiet kid who preferred books to socializing. This introversion would later fuel his larger-than-life stage persona. Sometimes the biggest personalities come from the quietest beginnings. The family's financial struggles in Israel became increasingly difficult. Florence made the heart-wrenching decision that would change everything. She would take her 8-year-old son and leave everything behind for a chance at the American dream. Stay tuned, because this immigration story has twists that shaped one of rock's most complex personalities: the journey to America and new beginnings. In 1958, 9-year-old Chaim and his mother arrived in New York City with practically nothing. Imagine being a child in a completely foreign country, unable to speak the language, with no father figure, living in poverty in Queens. This wasn't the glamorous rock star lifestyle, this was survival mode. Florence worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat, often cleaning offices at night while Chaim slept. The young boy had to grow up fast, learning English not just to communicate, but to help his mother navigate their new world. Here's something that might surprise you about this future rock legend. He was actually an excellent student who threw himself into American culture with incredible determination. But here's where it gets interesting. Chaim began transforming himself almost immediately. He started going by Gene, eventually adding Klein as his middle name to honor his mother. He discovered American television, comic books, and most importantly, music. The Beatles' appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show in 1964 was a revelation that would change his life's trajectory forever. Have you ever had a moment where you knew exactly what you wanted to do with your life? Gene had that moment watching those 4 musicians from Liverpool command an audience of millions. He convinced his mother to buy him a guitar, and despite their financial struggles, Florence Klein Witz made it happen. This instrument would be his ticket out of poverty, but the road ahead was far from easy. During his teenage years, Gene worked various jobs while pursuing music. He sold ice cream, worked in a delicatessen, and even taught guitar lessons. Every dollar earned was a step toward his dream, but what's coming next is even more surprising. The formation of one of rock's most theatrical bands almost didn't happen. From nobody to rock legend, the birth of Kiss. The early 1970s, New York music scene was brutal. Gene had been in several failed bands, including one called Bullfrog Beer. Yes, that's really what it was called. He was playing small clubs, barely making enough to survive, when fate intervened in the form of a classified ad in Rolling Stone magazine. Paul Stanley, born Stanley Burt Eisen, had placed an ad looking for a bass player. When Gene responded, neither man could have predicted they were about to create one of the most successful rock acts in history. But wait, there's a detail about their first meeting that fans rarely hear. Gene showed up to audition with a homemade bass guitar that he had painted himself. Talk about making an impression through sheer determination. The chemistry between Gene and Paul was immediate. They shared a vision for something bigger than just another rock band. They wanted to create a complete theatrical experience. They recruited guitarist Ace Frehley and drummer Peter Criss, and by early 1973, Kiss was born. But here's what you didn't know about those early days. Gene designed much of the band's visual concept himself. The demon persona, the makeup, the costumes, this wasn't some record company marketing scheme. This was Gene channeling his love of comic books and horror movies into a rock and roll character that would become legendary. Their first album, simply titled Kiss, was released in February 1974. It barely made a dent in the charts, and the band was nearly dropped by their record label. Can you imagine if Kiss had been dropped after one album? Rock history would be completely different. Stay tuned, because their breakthrough moment involves a decision that changed everything. The turning point came with their decision to focus on live performances. Gene's blood-spitting, fire-breathing demon character came alive on stage in ways that no studio recording could capture. By 1975, Kiss was selling out arenas across America. Their album, Alive, proved that this theatrical rock spectacle was exactly what audiences were craving: fame, fortune, and the price of success. By the late 1970s, Kiss was a global phenomenon generating millions of dollars annually. Gene Simmons had transformed from poor immigrant Chaim Witz into one of rock's most recognizable figures. But here's where the story takes some unexpected turns that reveal the complex man behind the makeup. Gene's business acumen became legendary. While other rock stars were focused solely on music, he was building an empire. Kiss merchandise became a phenomenon. Lunchboxes, comic books, action figures, and eventually even a television movie. By 1978, the band was earning more from merchandise than from album sales. This wasn't just about music anymore. This was about building a brand that would last decades. But success came with personal costs that fans rarely see. The demanding touring schedule, the pressure to maintain the larger-than-life persona, and the constant media attention began taking their toll. Gene's relationship suffered, and he admits that fame changed him in ways he didn't always like. Here's something most people don't know. Despite his wild rock star image, Gene never used drugs or alcohol. In a music industry famous for excess, he maintained complete sobriety throughout Kiss's most decadent periods. When asked why, he often credits his mother's sacrifices and his determination to never lose control of his destiny. The band's success continued through the early 1980s, but internal tensions were growing. What's coming next is even more surprising: the decision that nearly ended Kiss forever and Gene's controversial response to it. Controversies and personal battles. The early 1980s brought Kiss to a crossroads that would test Gene's resolve like never before. Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were struggling with personal demons and becoming increasingly unreliable. Gene faced a choice: compromise his vision or make the difficult decision to continue without original members. In 1983, Kiss made the shocking decision to remove their makeup and reveal their faces publicly for the first time. For Gene, this was both liberating and terrifying. The demon persona had become his armor, and now he was exposed as just Gene Simmons, not the mythical character he'd created. The makeup-free years brought new challenges and controversies. Gene's outspoken personality, which had been filtered through his demon character, now came across as arrogant to some critics and fans. His business ventures expanded beyond music into real estate, restaurants, and eventually reality television, leading some to question his commitment to rock and roll. But here's what critics missed. Gene never stopped working. While other rock stars from his era struggled with relevance, he continued evolving. His reality show, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, revealed a surprisingly devoted family man behind the rock star facade. Have you ever wondered how someone maintains a decades-long relationship in the music industry? Gene and longtime partner Shannon Tweed proved it was possible, eventually marrying in 2011 after 28 years together. The most significant controversy of his later career involved his comments about depression and suicide, which drew widespread criticism from mental health advocates. Gene eventually apologized and used the incident as a learning opportunity, showing a side of him that fans rarely see, someone willing to admit mistakes and grow from them. What's coming next reveals how Gene transformed these challenges into his greatest business successes, legacy, and recent years. Today, Gene Simmons stands as one of entertainment's most successful entrepreneurs. Kiss was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014, cementing their place in music history. But Gene's legacy extends far beyond rock and roll. His business portfolio now includes everything from sports teams to restaurants to a successful line of branded products. Forbes has estimated his net worth at over $400 million. Not bad for that poor immigrant kid from Queens. But here's what's most impressive. He's used his platform to inspire other immigrants and entrepreneurs. Gene frequently speaks about the importance of the American dream, crediting his success to the opportunities America provided his family. He's become an advocate for immigration rights and frequently discusses how his mother's courage in bringing him to America shaped everything that followed. In recent years, Kiss has been on their end-of-the-road farewell tour, which began in 2019. After more than 4 decades of performing, Gene is finally ready to hang up the demon costume. But knowing Gene Simmons, retirement will likely mean new ventures rather than slowing down. Here's something that might surprise you about his plans for the future. Gene has expressed interest in writing children's books and developing educational content about entrepreneurship. The man who once breathed fire on stage wants to teach the next generation about business and following their dreams. His relationship with his children, Nick and Sophie, shows a different side of the rock legend. Both have pursued their own creative paths, with Gene supporting their independence while sharing the lessons he learned from his own journey from Chaim Witz to Gene Simmons. The transformation from a shy, poor immigrant child to one of rock's most recognizable figures represents more than just personal success. Gene Simmons embodies the possibility that exists when talent meets determination and opportunity. His story proves that sometimes the most unlikely candidates become the biggest stars. What aspect of Gene Simmons' journey surprised you the most? Was it his business acumen, his sobriety throughout rock's most excessive era, or perhaps the shy child behind the demon makeup? His evolution from Chaim Witz to Gene Simmons represents one of entertainment's most complete transformations. As Kiss prepares for their final performances, Gene Simmons' legacy is secure. He took the American dream and amplified it through martial stacks and theatrical spectacle. More than just a rock star, he became a symbol of reinvention and the power of refusing to accept limitations. But wait, there's one final surprise about Gene's future plans that shows he's still thinking like that determined young immigrant who refused to let poverty define his destiny. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more incredible rock biography content. If this story of transformation and determination inspired you, let us know in the comments. What other rock legends would you like us to cover? We love hearing from our community about which stories matter to you. Thank you for being part of our community. What kind of videos would you like us to make next? Let us know in the comments. See you on the next video.